Hello, welcome to the Learn English Lab. Today's podcast is 1 hour plus podcast summary for IELTS Writing Part 02. You know, it's funny. So many students get completely obsessed with finding these super fancy words. But honestly, the real secret weapon, the thing that'll actually push you from a band 6 to a 7, is your organization. It's a huge deal, a full 25% of your score. So first up, let's nail those body paragraphs. To keep your ideas from wandering all over the place, you've got to use the PEEL method. It's a game changer. It just stands for point, explanation, example, and link. You make your point, explain it, back it up with an example, and then link it back to your main argument. Just stick to one single idea per paragraph. That's it. Second, the conclusion. This is all about something called the recency effect. Think about it. Your conclusion is the very last thing the examiner reads, so it leaves a massive impression on your final score. The rule here is simple. Restate your position and summarize your points. But, and this is critical, never, ever introduce new ideas at the end. And finally, don't use a cookie-cutter template for every essay. You have to adapt your structure to the question. An opinion essay flows completely differently than a discussion essay, right? Matching your structure to the question is absolutely essential for a logical flow. So the bottom line is this. Clarity is king. A simple, well-organized essay will always beat a complicated, messy one. Every time. Please, if this helped you out, take a second to like, share, and subscribe to this YouTube channel. Master the ending, and you master the exam.
Hello, welcome to the Learn English Lab. Today's podcast is IELTS Writing, How to Organize Your Essay Logically.
It is fantastic to be here. And this topic, we cover so many things, vocabulary, grammar, fluency, but this is, I think, the secret key. It's often the silent killer of an otherwise good score.
A silent killer. That's a pretty intense way to start a deep dive on essay writing. But I have to say, looking through the research, I think you might be right. The thing that really jumped out at me wasn't a complex grammar rule. It was a story, a scenario from the examiner notes. It's what you called the tale of two candidates.
It's a tragedy, really.
Yeah.
And it's one that plays out in exam halls all over the world every single weekend. It's almost predictable.
So let's paint the picture for everyone listening. I've got two people, let's call them candidate A and candidate B. They walk into the IELTS exam, and on paper, if you just look at their study habits, their vocabulary lists, they are identical.
Completely. They've both put in the hours, maybe 6 months of solid work. They have these amazing high-level words in their back pocket. They know all the fancy grammar structures, the conditionals, the passive voice. They feel ready.
They are absolutely ready. In terms of the raw materials, they're on a completely level playing field.
That's the perfect way to put it.
Yeah.
The bricks, the mortar, the steel beams, they have the same quality of materials to build with, no real difference in their core English knowledge.
So they sit the exam, they tackle the same essay question, they both walk out feeling pretty good, probably confident, and then 13 days later, the results arrive. Candidate A gets a band 6, candidate B gets a band 7.5.
And that gap is huge. That is not a small margin of error.
It's life-changing. I mean, that's the difference between getting accepted into your first choice university and having to scrap your plans and wait another year, maybe longer.
It's just heartbreaking for the student who gets that lower score because they can't figure out what they did wrong. They think, but I used all my best words. I used that complex sentence structure we practiced.
And that's the big reveal, isn't it? The twist in this story. The difference wasn't the fancy words. In fact, maybe candidate A, the one with the lower score, might have even used more complex vocabulary. The deciding factor was organization.
That is the absolute crux of it. You can have a brilliant vocabulary and perfect grammar, but if you can't arrange those brilliant ideas in a logical way, they just lose all their power. And that brings us to the core idea we need to unpack today. What we're calling invisible architecture.
I really love that phrase, invisible architecture. It sounds so solid. Let's break that metaphor down because I think it captures the whole issue perfectly.
Okay, think of it like this. Imagine a construction site. On that site, you've got piles of the most beautiful, expensive materials you can imagine. We're talking imported Italian marble, high tensile reinforced steel, gorgeous hand-blown glass panels.
Okay, so that's your vocabulary and grammar. The good stuff.
Precisely. Those are your linguistic resources. Now, if you just leave them all dumped in a big, chaotic pile on the ground, do you have a building?
No. You've got a very, very expensive mess. A junkyard, basically.
You have chaos. That's what an examiner sees when they read a disorganized essay. To turn those raw materials into a functional building, something that's stable and that people can actually walk through and admire, you need one thing first.
A blueprint.
A blueprint. You need a plan. You need structure. That is what essay organization is. It's the invisible framework, the architecture that holds all your amazing vocabulary and grammar together and gives it shape and purpose. Without it, the examiner is just stumbling around your construction site, trying not to trip over a loose pile of bricks.
That is such a powerful image, and I think a lot of students can feel that chaos when they're writing. There's another analogy in our notes about painting.
Oh yes, the painting analogy. It's so true. We see students trying to paint a masterpiece, like a detailed portrait. They're obsessing over the exact shading on an eyelid, trying to force in some incredibly complex phrase they learned.
But they haven't learned how to hold the paintbrush correctly.
They don't even know how to set up the easel. They're focused on the tiny decorative details before they've mastered the fundamental structure of how a painting or an essay is put together. Yep. They're decorating a house that doesn't have any walls yet.
So let's get down to brass tacks. Let's talk about the stakes here. Why does this matter so much? We know it's the difference between a 6 and a 7.5, but where does that show up in the actual scoring? Because most people just think writing means, did I spell everything right and use good grammar?
That's the most common misunderstanding of the IELTS writing test. If you actually look at the public band descriptors, the official scoring criteria, your mark is divided into 4 equal categories.
Oh, man.
And one of those 4, coherence and cohesion, makes up exactly 25% of your total writing score. A full quarter of your grade depends entirely on this one thing, how well you organize your thoughts and connect your ideas.
25%. That's massive. That's not a rounding error. That's the whole game for a lot of people. But I also saw a note about something you called the halo effect. This suggests that organization is actually worth even more than 25% in practice. How does that work?
This is where it gets really fascinating. And it moves from the technical to the psychological. It's about the impression you make on the human being who is reading your essay.
So it's not a formal part of the scoring, but it has a real impact.
It has a huge impact.
Yeah.
While organization is technically only a quarter of the score, a well-organized essay creates a halo that shines on everything else. It actually boosts your scores for vocabulary and grammar, too.
How is that possible? Isn't grammar either right or wrong? How can organization change that?
It's about clarity. Think about it from the examiner's point of view. If your essay flows logically from one point to the next, your complex vocabulary appears in a context where it makes perfect sense. It shines. Your sophisticated grammar structures are easy for the examiner to read and appreciate because the logic is carrying them along.
But if it's a mess?
If it's a mess, the examiner is so busy trying to figure out what you're trying to say, they might not even notice your brilliant vocabulary. Or worse, they might misunderstand your complex sentence and mark it as a grammatical error because the confusing structure made it hard to parse.
That makes perfect sense. So the disorganization actually creates a negative halo. It casts a shadow over your other skills.
Exactly. Confusion kills your score across all 4 criteria. So whether you're listening to this and you're currently at a band 5 hoping for a 6.5, or you're at a 6.5 trying to push for that elusive 8, focusing on organization is the single most effective thing you can do. It's the highest return on your investment of study time.
You can't learn 10,000 new words in a week.
But you can learn the principles of logical organization in a week. Absolutely.
Okay, I'm convinced. I want the blueprint for this invisible architecture. Let's lay out the plan for this deep dive. We're going to tackle this on 3 different levels. Is that right?
Yes. To make it really clear, we're going to look at organization from 3 perspectives: the macro, the mezzo, and the micro.
Which, in plain English, means?
The macro is the big picture, the blueprint of the entire essay. The mezzo is the middle level, the structure of the individual rooms or paragraphs. And the micro is the tiny detail, the mortar that holds the bricks together, the sentence-to-sentence connections.
Blueprint, rooms, and mortar. I love it. Okay, but before we start laying bricks, we need to get our philosophy straight. We need to really define what logical organization even means in this context. I think for a lot of people, they hear that and just think, oh, I need to remember to hit the enter key a few times.
And it's so much more than just paragraph breaks. Logical organization means that every single word, every sentence, every paragraph in your essay has a clear and specific purpose. There is no decoration. Nothing is just there to fill space. And most importantly, the ideas flow in a predictable way.
Predictable. That's a fascinating word choice because in most writing, like a novel or a film, you want to be surprising. You want twists.
In creative writing, absolutely. But in academic writing, for an exam like this, predictable is a compliment. You want the examiner to feel safe and comfortable. You want them to know at all times exactly where you are taking them. If you surprise an examiner, you've probably just confused them.
Which leads us to another fantastic analogy from the research, the tour guide.
Yes, this is the single most important mindset shift for any IELTS writer. I want everyone listening to imagine this right now. You, the writer, are a tour guide. The examiner is a tourist visiting a new city for the first time.
Okay, so they're in my hands. I'm responsible for their experience of this city of my ideas.
Precisely. They have no map. They don't know the local language. They don't know what you think about climate change or public transport. You have to lead them by the hand. Now imagine you get a bad tour guide.
We've all had one of those.
What do? They might start at a museum, then suddenly you're at a beach with no explanation of how you got there or why. Then they make you stand and stare at a completely random, uninteresting tree for 20 minutes. And then as you're leaving, you run right past the magnificent historic cathedral and they don't even point it out.
I feel stressed just thinking about it. It's disorienting and frustrating. You spend the whole time thinking, where are we? What's the point of this? Am I missing something important?
You've hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
You leave that tour feeling exhausted and more confused than when you started. That is a disorganized essay. It jumps between unrelated ideas. It spends too much time on a minor, irrelevant detail, that random tree, and it completely misses the main argument, the cathedral. It leaves the reader asking, so what?
And the good tour guide, by contrast.
The good tour guide gives you a clear itinerary. They say, okay, first we are going to visit the museum to understand the city's history. Then, because that history directly influenced the local architecture, we will walk 2 blocks to the cathedral to see a perfect example of it. They lead you smoothly, they explain the connections, they hold your hand every step of the way.
And this really gets to the heart of the examiner's perspective. I think we all forget that the person marking our paper is a real human being. They're probably on their 5th cup of coffee, reading their 30th essay of the day on the exact same topic.
This is the absolute key. You have to shift your perspective. Your essay does not exist for you. It exists for your reader. The biggest trap writers fall into is what's called stream of consciousness writing.
That's where you just write down your thoughts as they come into your head. Oh, that's an interesting idea, and that reminds me of this other thing.
Exactly. And because all those connections are happening inside your own brain, it all makes perfect sense to you. You know why you jumped from talking about the economy to talking about childhood education. But the examiner is not a mind reader. They can't see the connections inside your head. They can only see the words on the page.
So if you don't make those links explicit, they're just lost.
They're completely lost. And you have to remember the reality of their job. They are under pressure to work quickly and consistently. If your essay is well organized, you're making their life easy. You are serving them your argument on a silver platter. You're saying, here is my main point, here is my first reason, here is the evidence for that reason. See? Simple. They will love you for that.
Whereas if your essay is a chaotic mess,
you're forcing them to become a detective.
Yeah.
They have to work hard, rereading sentences, trying to find your main idea, hunting for the connections. And trust me, an examiner who is frustrated and working hard is rarely a generous examiner when it comes time to assign a score.
Okay, so the mission is clear. Be the good tour guide. Let's start building this tour. We're moving into segment 2, macro organization. This is the blueprint, the overall structure of the essay.
This is the highest level view, the shape of the whole building before we even think about what's inside the rooms.
So what is the gold standard here? Is there one perfect template that we should all be aiming for?
For IELTS Writing Task 2, the structure that works for, I would say, 95% of questions is the classic 4-paragraph structure. You have an introduction, you have body paragraph 1, body paragraph 2, and you have a conclusion. Simple as that.
And that structure naturally gets you to the right word count.
It does. If you write a solid intro and conclusion of about 40-50 words each, and 2 well-developed body paragraphs of about 90-100 words each, you land perfectly in that 260-290 word sweet spot.
I often hear students asking about a 5-paragraph essay. Is that a good idea, or is it just making more work for yourself?
It can be a good idea, but only in specific situations. For example, some discuss both views and give your own opinion. Questions can benefit from a 5th paragraph, one for view A, one for view B, and a 3rd body paragraph for your own distinct opinion. But it's a higher risk strategy.
Why is it risky?
Because you only have 40 minutes. The more paragraphs you decide to write, the less time you have to develop each one. It's often better to have 2 really strong, well-developed body paragraphs than 3 shallow, rushed ones. So for most people, 4 is the safer, more effective bet.
And the key point I picked up from the notes is that the number itself isn't the magic ingredient. What matters is the function of each paragraph.
That is the perfect way to phrase it. Every paragraph needs a clear job description. If a paragraph doesn't have a specific job, it shouldn't be in the essay. It's just taking up space.
So let's write some job descriptions. Let's start with the introduction. What does a good introduction actually need to do? What's its job?
It has 3 potential jobs, 2 of which are absolutely mandatory. The first job is to paraphrase the question. You must show the examiner, right from the first sentence, that you have understood the prompt by restating it in your own words.
So it's basically you saying, I've heard you, I understand the task.
Precisely. The second job, which is optional but adds a layer of sophistication, is to provide a little context, maybe a general statement about why this topic is relevant today. But the third job is the most important one. It's non-negotiable. It is to present your thesis statement.
The thesis statement, that's a term that I think really intimidates people. It sounds so formal and academic, like it's something from a PhD dissertation.
It really shouldn't be scary. All a thesis statement is a promise. It's one clear sentence that tells the reader your main argument or what the essay is going to do. It sets the direction for the entire essay.
Let's use a concrete example from our notes. The question is, some people believe unpaid community service should be compulsory for high schoolers. Do you agree or disagree? How would we build a good intro for that?
Okay, so a weak intro would just be something like, I agree with this statement. I think community service is good. It's too simple. It's not paraphrase.
Wait, it's
A
layup.
strong intro would follow the job description. First, paraphrase. The proposition that high school students should be required to perform unpaid community service is a subject of ongoing debate.
Yeah.
We've rephrased compulsory to required and high schoolers to high school students.
Simple, clean. You've done job 1. Then the thesis.
And then the thesis, the promise, something like, while some contend that this infringes upon students' free time, I firmly believe that such a policy offers profound benefits for both personal development and the wider community.
Boom, right there. In that one sentence, I know exactly what your position is, and I even have a hint of what your 2 body paragraphs will be about. Personal development and community benefits.
That's the power of a good thesis. It's the map for the rest of the tour.
Okay, on to the body paragraphs. What's their job description?
The golden rule for body paragraphs is incredibly simple, but so often ignored. It is. 1 paragraph is about main idea.
Just 1. But what if I have 5 great reasons why I agree? Shouldn't I show the examiner how many ideas I have?
And that is the single biggest trap in IELTS writing. Students think that listing more ideas makes them sound smarter. It does the opposite. It makes the essay superficial. You end up with a paragraph that reads like a shopping list. It's good because it teaches responsibility, and it also helps them get into university, and it's good for the elderly, and it also keeps teenagers off the streets.
It's all breadth and no depth.
Exactly. It's a list, not an argument. A high-scoring paragraph takes just one of those ideas. For example, it teaches responsibility and explores it deeply. It explains how it teaches responsibility, why that's important, and gives a specific example of it in action. Depth over breadth every single time.
We're going to dig into exactly how to create that depth in the Mezzo organization section. So let's move to the final piece of the blueprint, the conclusion. Is this just where I copy and paste my introduction?
That's a common low-scoring strategy. No, the conclusion has its own job. It's not just a repeat. Think of it as the final stop on your tour. Its job is to briefly summarize the key points you made in your body paragraphs, just to remind the examiner of the journey you took them on, and then to reinforce your thesis in different words.
What are the big don'ts for a conclusion? I know some people feel like they need to end with a dramatic flourish.
The cardinal sin of a conclusion is to introduce a new idea. If you suddenly start talking about the economic implications of community service in the final sentence, when you haven't mentioned it before, you've just confused the examiner at the last second. You've opened a new door right as you're trying to leave the building.
And what about tone?
Don't be apologetic. Never say things like, this is just my opinion, but, or there are many views on this topic. No, you've just spent 200 words building an argument. Stand by it. Be confident.
I like the analogy that the conclusion is the dessert after the meal.
It's a perfect analogy. You can have a wonderful 3-course meal, a fantastic essay, but if you serve a terrible rushed dessert at the end, it leaves a bad final impression. A weak conclusion can sour the whole experience right before the examiner puts down their pen and decides on your score.
Okay, that macro blueprint is incredibly clear. Intro, 2 bodies, conclusion, each with a specific job. But I know what people are thinking. That sounds great, but does that exact same blueprint work for every single type of IELTS question? They throw a lot of different question types at you.
That is a critical question, and the answer is no. A rigid one-size-fits-all template will fail you. You have to be adaptable. The blueprint is the foundation, but you have to change the floor plan depending on the type of house you're building. This brings us to segment 3, matching structure to question types.
All right, let's run through the main categories. First up, the most common one, opinion essays. To what extent do you agree or disagree?
Here you have 2 primary strategic choices. The first, and often the safest, is what I call the one-sided approach. This is where you decide to either 100% agree or 100% disagree.
Is that really okay? It feels a little unsophisticated. Aren't we supposed to show that we can see both sides of an issue?
In a university debate class, perhaps. But in a 40-minute timed exam, clarity is king. The one-sided approach is powerful because it creates an incredibly clear logical structure. Body paragraph 1 is your first reason for agreeing. Body paragraph 2 is your second reason for agreeing. The entire essay is pulling in one unified direction. It's a very strong, straight road for the examiner to follow.
So it's easier to stay organized under pressure.
Much easier. You avoid contradicting yourself. Now, you could do the balanced approach, where you say, I partially agree.
How does that look?
That would typically be structured as. Body paragraph 1 explains the reasons you agree with the statement. Body paragraph 2 then explains the reasons you disagree, or the situations where you think the statement is not true. It's a valid approach, but it is much, much harder to do well.
Why is it so much harder?
Because you need very sophisticated language to manage the transition and show the relationship between the two sides. Phrases like, despite these advantages, or, however, this viewpoint is only valid up to a point. If you don't handle that transition perfectly, the essay can feel confused and contradictory. For most test takers, picking one side is the strategically smarter move.
That's a brilliant piece of practical advice. Don't try to be a hero, just write a clear essay and get the points. Okay, next type, discussion essays, the ones that say, discuss both views and give your own opinion.
Right. Here, the question itself gives you the structure. The most logical and common way to organize this is the view-by-view approach. Body paragraph 1 is dedicated entirely to explaining view A. Body paragraph 2 is dedicated entirely to explaining view B.
And what about your own opinion? The question asks for it. Where does that go?
You have a couple of options. The clearest way is to add a third, shorter body paragraph where you explicitly state and justify your opinion. Or you can integrate your opinion into the introduction and then clearly state which side you favor in the conclusion. The one thing you must not do is forget to give your opinion at all. It's a requirement of the task.
What about mixing the views in each paragraph?
That's called an integrated approach, where you might discuss, say, the economic aspect of view A and view B together. It's possible, but it's incredibly difficult to control. It's like trying to cook 2 different meals in the same pot. It's much cleaner to keep them in separate paragraphs. Keep the house tidy.
Love that. Okay, what about problem-solution essays?
The non-negotiable concept here is parallel structure. Your body paragraphs must mirror each other. If body paragraph 1 identifies 2 problems, let's say problem A is lack of public awareness and problem B is insufficient government funding, then body paragraph 2 must propose solutions for those exact 2 problems.
So you can't identify funding as a problem and then propose better education as a solution without linking them.
You've got it. I see so many essays where there's a disconnect. The problems paragraph talks about traffic congestion, and the solutions paragraph talks about building more parks. Doesn't make sense. The examiner is looking for a logical link. You identified problem A, now show me solution A. You identified problem B, now show me solution B. It needs to be a perfect match.
And the last major type, the 2-part questions. Things like, what are the causes of this trend? Is this a positive or negative development?
This is the most straightforward of all. The question gives you 2 jobs to do. So you use one body paragraph for each job. Body paragraph 1 answers the first question, the causes. Body paragraph 2 answers the second question, whether it's positive or negative. Don't ever try to blend them together. It's a simple 2-part task, so give a simple 2-part answer.
It's amazing how simple it sounds when you lay it out, but I can totally see how in the panic of the exam, everything could just get jumbled together.
And that is precisely why we practice the architecture first, so that when the storm of the exam hits, your structure is strong enough to stand up to the pressure.
Okay, we have the blueprint. We know how to adapt the floor plan to the question. Now we have to actually build and furnish the rooms. It's time to zoom in. This is segment 4, Mezzo organization, the art of the perfect paragraph.
This is where the points are won or lost.
So you've already given us the golden rule, one paragraph, one main idea, but let's get practical. If my main idea is, the primary benefit of remote work is flexibility. That's only 8 words. I need to write 90 more. How do I expand that one idea without just repeating myself or adding new ideas?
This is the question. And the answer is a secret weapon, a framework called PEEL, P-E-L.
P-E-E-L. Okay, let's peel back the layers on this. What does the P stand for?
P stands for a point. This is your very first sentence. It's often called the topic sentence. Its job is to make a clear point or claim. It's the promise you make to the reader for that paragraph.
Can you give me a classic bad example versus a good example?
A weak, bad topic sentence is something vague like, there are many things to consider about remote work. It tells the reader nothing. It's empty. A strong, clear topic sentence is, the primary advantage of remote work is the significant increase in flexibility it affords employees.
Okay, that's crystal clear. I know this entire paragraph is now going to be about flexibility. No surprises.
You made a specific claim, now you have to support it. That brings us to the first E, which stands for explanation. This is the why and the how.
This is the step I think a lot of people skip. They state their point and then immediately jump to an example.
That's a huge mistake. They assume the examiner understands the logic behind their point. You can't assume anything. You have to explain it. You have to elaborate on the cause and effect. Let's take that deep dive example you mentioned earlier. Social media and its impact on teenage mental health.
Okay.
A low-scoring, underdeveloped paragraph would just state the point. Using social media too much can cause depression in teenagers. That may be an example. It's too simplistic.
It's a statement of fact, but not an argument. It sounds like something you'd read in a headline.
Exactly. Now, a high-scoring paragraph would have a deep explanation. After the point, it would say something like, this is because these platforms are often designed using variable reward schedules, similar to slot machines. Features like likes and notifications trigger intermittent dopamine releases in the brain, creating a cycle of dependency. For the adolescent brain, where the prefrontal cortex responsible for impulse control is still developing, this can be particularly problematic.
Wow. Okay, that's a completely different level of analysis. You're not just saying it's bad. You're explaining the neurological and psychological mechanism behind why it's bad.
And that is the difference between a band 6 and a band 8. You're not adding more ideas, you're digging deeper into your one idea. That is where your word count should come from the depth of your explanation.
Okay, so we have point and a deep explanation. The second E in PEEL is for example.
Correct. Example or evidence. After you've explained your point in abstract terms, you need to ground it in something concrete and relatable.
Now, do I need to make up statistics here? I see students writing things like, a recent study by Oxford University found that 82% of teenagers.
Please, no. Do not do that. Examiners can spot fake statistics from a mile away, and it undermines your credibility. You don't need data, you just need specificity.
What does specificity mean in this context? If I can't use a statistic, what do I use?
Instead of a generic statement like, in many countries, get specific. For instance, in South Korea, where internet addiction among youth is a recognized public health issue. Instead of a vague noun like people, get specific. Consider a high school student who, instead of doing homework, spends hours scrolling through curated images of their peers' seemingly perfect lives.
It makes it real. It paints a picture for the reader.
It creates a concrete image and demonstrates that you can apply your theoretical point to a real-world or hypothetical situation. That is what counts as strong evidence in an IELTS essay.
Perfect. So we have point, explanation, example. And the final letter, L, is for link.
Link is the final sentence of your paragraph. Its job is to wrap everything up and link it back to the essay's main thesis, or the overall question. It's the so what of the paragraph.
So for our remote work example,
it could be something like, therefore, this newfound flexibility is a compelling reason why many modern companies are shifting towards remote or hybrid models. It just closes the loop and reminds the reader why you just told them all of this.
So the PEEL framework is almost like a safety net. It's a checklist for every body paragraph. If you're missing an E or an L, you know your paragraph is weak and underdeveloped.
It's a formula for success. If you consciously follow PEEL for every body paragraph, it is almost physically impossible to write a disorganized or underdeveloped one.
We've built the rooms perfectly. They're well furnished and logical. Now we need the mortar to hold the bricks together and the hallways to connect the rooms. Let's move to segment 5, micro-organization, the sentence level stuff. Cohesion and flow.
Right. This is what stops an essay from sounding robotic. We've all read those essays where every sentence is technically correct, but it feels clunky, like a series of disconnected statements. We need the glue.
The first type of glue mentioned in our outline is transition words. But you flagged this as a potential trap.
It's a huge trap. It's the trap of over-transitioning. Many students are taught a list of linking words. Firstly, secondly, furthermore, moreover, in addition, and they think that the more of these they sprinkle into their essay, the higher their cohesion score will be.
And that's not true.
It's the opposite of true. It makes the writing sound incredibly unnatural and forced. You get sentences like, firstly, exercise is good for the body. Furthermore, it strengthens the heart. Moreover, it can also improve your mental health. Additionally, people who exercise often have more friends.
It sounds like a robot trying to write a list. It's just awful to read.
It's terrible.
The secret is to use these powerful transition words sparingly, only when you need to signal a genuine shift in logic. For example, when you're introducing an opposing idea, a word like however or on the other hand is essential, but you don't need one in every sentence.
So how do you create flow without constantly saying moreover? What's the more sophisticated alternative?
The more advanced technique is to use the ideas themselves to form the connection. Let's stick with the exercise example. Instead of just listing benefits, you can create a logical chain. You could end one sentence with, white improving cardiovascular health, and start the next with, this physical well-being often has a direct positive impact on mental clarity.
Ah, I see. You're using the concept of physical well-being as the bridge to the next point, mental clarity.
You're using meaning to create the link, not just a generic signpost word. That is a hallmark of high-level writing. It shows true fluency of thought.
Okay, that makes sense. This leads nicely into the next tool, reference words. Using words like this, these, it, such. These are your best friends for avoiding repetition and creating a smooth flow. Instead of repeating a long phrase like the problem of rising urban pollution, you can simply refer to it in the next sentence as this issue or this challenge.
For example, governments are struggling to combat the problem of rising urban pollution. This issue requires immediate international cooperation.
Perfect. This issue clearly points back to the problem you just mentioned. It links the two sentences together beautifully. But there's a big warning that comes with this.
What's that?
The danger of ambiguity. If your previous sentence contains multiple ideas, just using the word this can be confusing. For example, the new policy affects students, teachers, and parents, and this is causing a lot of stress. What is this? The policy. The effect on students. The effect on all three groups.
Right, it's unclear, so how do you fix that?
The simple fix is to always add a noun after this, if there's any doubt. This policy, or this complex situation, or this stress on families. That little noun clarifies exactly what you're referring to.
That's a great practical tip. Now, there's a more advanced term in the notes that I want to unpack. Lexical cohesion, using semantic fields. It sounds very technical. What does it actually mean?
It sounds much more complicated than it is. It's actually something we all do naturally when we're fluent in a topic. A semantic field is just a group of words that are related to the same topic or idea.
Give me an example.
Okay, if you're writing a paragraph about the topic of university, you shouldn't have to keep repeating the word university. A well-written paragraph would naturally contain a whole field of related words. Campus, lectures, faculty, tuition fees, semesters, dorms, undergraduates.
Ah, I see. So the words themselves create a cohesive web of meaning. You don't need to add furthermore between lectures and tuition fees because their relationship is already obvious.
Precisely. The shared vocabulary does the work of cohesion for you. It tells the examiner, we are still in the world of university. It also demonstrates a rich and topic-specific vocabulary, which gets you points for a lexical resource as well.
So it's a double win. Finally, at the micro level, let's talk about connecting the big blocks. Paragraph-to-paragraph connections. How do we move from the end of body paragraph 1 to the start of body paragraph 2 without it feeling like a sudden jump?
There are two main techniques here. The first is what's called the hook and eye. The last sentence of your first body paragraph contains a hook that the first sentence of your second body paragraph can latch onto.
Like connecting train carriages.
Exactly. Or you can use a clear contrast transition. This is essential if you're writing a balanced or discussion essay. If body paragraph 1 was all about the advantages of a policy, body paragraph 2 must start with a clear signal of the shift, like, despite these clear benefits, the policy is not without its significant drawbacks.
It's the tour guide again. Okay, we finished looking at the beautiful garden. Now I'm going to take you to see the factory next door.
Always be guiding your reader. Never make them guess where you're going next.
This has been incredibly detailed. We've covered the blueprint, the rooms, and the mortar. But I want to move into our final section, segment 6, advanced strategies and troubleshooting. Because even with the best plan, things can go wrong in a high-pressure exam.
They absolutely can. The first thing that goes wrong is time management.
Let's talk about planning. You said before we should plan. But how long? In a 40-minute test, every second feels precious.
This is probably the most resisted piece of advice I give, but it's the most important. You must spend the first 5 to 7 minutes doing nothing but planning.
7 minutes. That's almost 20% of the total time. I can hear listeners having a panic attack just thinking about not writing for 7 whole minutes.
I know it feels like an eternity, but it is an investment that pays huge dividends. Here's the simple math. If you spend 7 minutes creating a solid outline, your thesis, your topic sentences for each body paragraph, and your key examples, you will have a clear roadmap. You can then spend the next 28 minutes just writing without ever having to stop and think, what should I say next?
And the alternative?
The alternative is you start writing immediately in a panic. You write a great first paragraph. Then you get halfway through the second paragraph, realize your argument doesn't make any sense or you've contradicted yourself, and then you experience what we call brain freeze.
The dreaded brain freeze. Staring at the paper, clock ticking, mind completely blank.
And you end up wasting 10 or 15 minutes in that state of panic. So which is better? A calm, focused 7 minutes of planning, or a frantic 15 minutes of staring at a half-finished, dead-end essay? The choice is obvious. You sharpen the axe before you start chopping the tree.
Speaking of brain freeze, what if it happens during the planning stage? You're staring at the topic, you know you need to come up with ideas for your peel paragraphs, and just nothing. Your mind is a total blank.
This is very common. The pressure can be immense. The best trick here is to use what I call the universal themes. Almost any IELTS essay topic can be analyzed through one of these 5 lenses: the economy, health, the environment, technology, or education.
How does that work in practice? Let's say the topic is something abstract, like the importance of international tourism, and I'm stuck.
Okay, apply the lenses. Economy. Tourism creates jobs, brings in foreign currency. Health. Can spread disease, but can also promote wellness tourism. Environment. Causes pollution from flights, but can fund conservation. Technology. Online booking has revolutionized travel. Education. Travel broadens the mind, promotes cultural understanding. See? In 30 seconds, you have 5 potential main ideas for your body paragraphs.
That is an absolute lifesaver. It's a system for generating ideas when your brain won't cooperate.
It's a cheat code to get you started.
Okay, let's list some of the most common mistakes in organization that students should actively avoid. We've touched on the list essay.
The list essay is enemy number 1. A paragraph that is just reason A, reason B, reason C, with no explanation or depth. It's a guaranteed way to get a low score for coherence.
What about the wandering essay?
The wandering essay is one that goes off on tangents. You start by talking about the benefits of public transport, which reminds you of a train journey you took, which leads you to talk about the beautiful countryside, and suddenly you've forgotten your original point. You have to be ruthless. Every single sentence must directly support the topic sentence of its paragraph. If it doesn't, you must delete it, even if it's your most beautiful sentence.
Kill your darlings, as writers say.
You have to. And the third one is the sandwich essay.
The sandwich essay, what's that?
This is an essay with good bread, a decent introduction and conclusion, but the filling in the middle is just one giant messy blob of text. There are no clear paragraph breaks. It's just a wall of words.
The visual structure matters. The examiner needs to see those breaks.
It matters immensely. Visually, if an essay looks like one dense block, the examiner mentally sighs before they even start reading. It instantly signals, this is probably going to be disorganized. Use that white space. It helps the reader breathe.
To finish up, let's talk about some advanced techniques for those listeners who are already comfortable with the basics and are aiming for those top bands, 8 or 9. What is the funnel technique?
The funnel is a sophisticated way to structure your introduction. You start very broad with a general statement about the topic in the world today. Then you narrow it down to the specific debate or context of the question, and you end with your sharp, specific thesis statement.
Broad to specific, like a funnel pouring liquid into a bottle.
Exactly. And for your conclusion, you can use the inverted funnel. You do the opposite. You start sharp by restating your specific thesis. Then you broaden out, perhaps by discussing the wider implications of your argument or offering a thought about the future. It gives the whole essay a very elegant, symmetrical shape.
And what about emphasis by position?
This is a subtle but powerful psychological trick. In any piece of writing, the positions of greatest emphasis are the very beginning and the very end. The middle is where information tends to get lost.
So in a paragraph, that means the topic sentence and the link sentence are the most important.
They are the prime real estate. So you should never bury your strongest argument or your most compelling example in the middle of a paragraph. Put your main point right at the start in the topic sentence and put your concluding powerful thought in the final sentence. The sentences in between are the supporting cast. The first and last sentences are the stars of the show.
That's incredibly smart. It's about consciously directing the examiner's attention to your best work.
You are controlling their reading experience, which is what a good tour guide does.
We have completely disassembled and then reassembled the idea of essay writing. This concept of invisible architecture makes so much sense when you break it down into these macro, mezzo, and micro levels.
It demystifies it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It shows you that a high score in writing isn't some kind of magic. It's not about being a born writer. It's about engineering. It's about following a logical blueprint.
So, to summarize the incredible journey we've been on in this deep dive,
I'd say the first thing is to remember that organization is a full 25% of your score, but its halo effect means it influences everything. And remember your role. You are the tour guide, making the journey easy and enjoyable for the examiner.
we mastered the macro blueprint of the 4-paragraph essay. We learned how to write the perfect mezzo-level paragraph using the Peel framework point, explanation, example, link.
And we looked at the micro-level glue that holds it all together, using transitions wisely, using reference words correctly, and building lexical cohesion. Above all else, we learned that planning is not wasting time. It's the most valuable time you'll spend.
I think the biggest takeaway for me, the one sentence that sums it all up, is that a well-organized essay shows a clear mind.
That's it, right here.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, the examiner isn't just testing your English. They're testing your ability to think logically and communicate clearly. If your essay is clear, they will assume your thinking is clear. And that is what gets rewarded with a high score.
This has been an absolutely fascinating and incredibly practical deep dive. I feel like I could go and tackle an essay question right now.
I hope everyone listening feels the same way. Just remember to draw your blueprint first.
I certainly will. And to everyone listening, thank you so much for joining us in the lab today. If you found this deep dive helpful, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to this YouTube channel. It genuinely helps us continue to produce this kind of in-depth content for you.
It really does. Happy writing, everyone.
We'll see you in the next one.
Hello. Welcome to the Learn English Lab. Today's podcast is IELTS Writing: How to Write Strong Conclusions.
It is fantastic to be here. You know, it's funny, in the world of IELTS prep, we spend so much time, hours, obsessing over introduction.
Oh, the hooks, the thesis statement, all of that.
Yeah, exactly. And then ages agonizing over body paragraphs, topic sentences. But the conclusion, it always feels like the poor cousin of the IELTS family.
The afterthought.
It's the afterthought. And it's a topic I'm so passionate about because, frankly, it's the one area where I see really capable, intelligent students just throw away marks.
Unnecessarily, right. I think unnecessarily is the key word there.
Yep.
It's almost tragic to do all that hard work and then fumble right at the goal line.
It really is.
But before we get into the nuts and bolts of it all, I want to set a scene. I want to take us to a place that I think a lot of our listeners will find, well, hauntingly familiar.
Oh, I have a feeling I know where you're going with this.
Let's call it the nightmare scenario. Picture this. You're in the exam hall. The air conditioning is humming just a little too loudly. You can almost smell the anxiety in the room.
I know that smell.
And you spend the better part of 40 minutes crafting what you're pretty sure is a masterpiece.
Yeah.
Your introduction was snappy. It grabbed the attention right away.
You're in the zone.
Completely in the zone. Your body, paragraphs, they were just flowing. You were using vocabulary that would make a dictionary jealous. Words like ubiquitous and deleterious. You feel like a linguistic virtuoso.
So far, so good. This sounds like the perfect exam experience.
It is. You're flying high. But then you glance up at that big, ominous clock on the wall, and the big hand is moving way, way faster than it should be.
It always does.
There are 3 minutes left, 180 seconds. And the panic just sets in. Your heart starts hammering against your ribs. Your palms get a little sweaty. And you realize, with this dawning horror, you haven't written the ending. You've left the door wide open. So what do? You scramble, you grab your pencil, your hand is probably shaking a little bit, and you hastily scribble something like, "In conclusion, I think this is a good topic, and there are many points to consider."
Ouch. That That physically hurts to hear. It's like watching a gymnast perform a perfect routine and then just land flat on their face.
It is, isn't it? But it happens all the time. And then the examiner calls, time's up, pencils down, and you hand in your paper knowing deep down that your masterpiece just kind of fizzled out. It died with a whimper.
That whole narrative you just described is incredibly, incredibly common. I see variations of it in practice essays every single week. And it is tragic because the conclusion is, paradoxically, the most neglected part of the essay, but it's arguably the most crucial.
It's the last thing they read.
It's the art of leaving a lasting impression. You know, as the old saying goes, you never get a second chance to make a final impression.
And that is exactly what we are here to fix today. That's our mission for this deep dive. We're going to move way beyond the standard robotic, in conclusion, I agree, which, let's be honest, helps nobody.
Right. It's a placeholder, not a conclusion.
We're going to provide a complete toolkit. We're covering everything, Task 1 academic, Task 1 general training, and of course the big beast, Task 2.
We want to transform those conclusions from these forgettable afterthoughts into really compelling closures. We want to turn that final paragraph into something that actually boosts your band score rather than dragging it down.
So the examiner puts down your paper and thinks, wow, now that was a complete thought.
That's the goal.
Okay, so let's unpack this properly. I want to play devil's advocate for a second. Why bother? I mean, really, if I've written a fantastic essay up to that point, let's say 250 words of pure gold, does the conclusion really matter that much? Is an examiner really going to change my grade based on the last 3 sentences?
The short answer is yes, absolutely. For the long answer, we really need to look at the psychology of the examiner.
The psychology? You mean we're actually analyzing the person marking the paper?
Indeed. We have to remember that examiners are human beings. They're not grading robots. They're not some AI algorithm.
Right, they get tired.
They're tired teachers, usually marking these at the end of a long day or on a weekend. They're subject to cognitive biases, just like the rest of us. And one of the most powerful biases in human psychology is something called the recency effect.
The recency effect. Okay, I'm guessing that means we remember the most recent thing we've encountered.
Spot on. It's our tendency to be influenced most heavily by the last thing we read or experience. Think about it like a meal at a really fancy restaurant.
Oh, okay.
You could have a fantastic appetizer, maybe some amazing truffle soup, a wonderful main course, perfectly cooked steak. But if the dessert arrives and it's burnt or it's soggy or it just tastes like cardboard, what are you going to talk about on the drive home?
The terrible dessert. Of course, it kind of ruins the whole experience. You almost forget about how good the steak was.
Correct. The aftertaste is bitter. Now, just apply that to the IELTS essay. When an examiner finishes reading your paper, your conclusion is the very last thing in their mind. It is fresh.
And that's the moment they're making the judgment.
That is the very moment, literally the second they finish reading, that they reach for the scoring rubric to decide your fate. A weak, rushed, or incomplete conclusion casts a shadow over the entire essay. It makes all that previous good work feel less substantial.
But a strong one.
A strong one acts like a lens that sharpens everything that came before. It can elevate a good essay to a great one. It confirms the quality.
That makes total sense. It's all about leaving them with a good case in their mouth right before they circle that number. But let's get a bit more technical. We know the IELTS isn't graded on just vibes, right? It's graded on 4 specific criteria. How does one paragraph specifically help with those band score criteria?
It's amazing, actually. It hits all 4 if you do it right. Let's break it down, because this is where the strategy really comes in. First, you've got task response.
Okay, task response. That's basically, did you answer the question?
That's the heart of it. A proper conclusion proves you fully addressed the prompt and, crucially, that you can summarize your position clearly. If you just stop writing, or if your conclusion is vague and just says there are many points, you haven't really responded to the task of writing a full essay.
You've just written a list of points.
Exactly. The conclusion is the bow that ties the whole package together. Without it, the task isn't complete.
Okay, so that's task response. What about coherence and cohesion?
Oh, this is a huge one. A conclusion signals a logical flow. It tells the reader, okay, I've taken you on a journey, we've looked at the arguments, and now here we are at the destination. It provides a satisfying close.
And without it, you're just leaving the reader stranded.
You're leaving them stranded. It's like a movie that just cuts to black 5 minutes before the end. It feels disjointed. It totally ruins the cohesion of the piece.
And I'm guessing lexical resource, vocabulary comes into play as well.
Of course. It's your final chance to show off. But here's the key. It is a test of your paraphrasing skills. You need to restate your ideas, but you absolutely cannot just copy the words you use in your introduction.
Right, because that just looks lazy.
It looks lazy and it shows a limited vocabulary. If you can express the same core idea in a completely new way at the end, that's a massive tick for your lexical resource score. It shows range and flexibility.
And finally, what about grammar?
It's a fantastic place to use complex sentence structures. We'll talk more about this later, but using things like conditional sentences, if governments were to implement this policy, then the situation would likely improve, is a brilliant way to boost the grammar score right at the finish line.
It shows you can handle more complex hypothetical grammar.
Yes, it's your final grammatical flourish.
So what you're really saying is that this small investment of time, maybe 5 minutes at the end, can yield a disproportionately high return on the final score.
Absolutely. It's the best investment you can make in those 40 minutes. Most candidates run out of time or energy. By mastering this one small part, you immediately set yourself apart from the crowd. You look like a Band 8 student just by your structure alone.
Okay, I am sold on the why. I'm now officially terrified of the recency effect. Let's get into the how. Let's start with Task 2 essay conclusions. This is the core strategy, right? Because Task 2 is worth double the marks of Task 1.
It's the main event.
So what's the anatomy of a perfect conclusion? What are the ingredients?
Every effective Task 2 conclusion needs to have a specific structure. You can think of it like a recipe with 4 distinct ingredients. The first one is simple, the transition signal.
And this is where everyone writes in conclusion, right? Is that actually wrong?
It's not wrong, let's be clear. In conclusion is grammatically correct. It works. However,
everyone does.
Nearly every single candidate uses it. It's vanilla.
Yeah.
If you want to step it up a notch, make it feel a bit more sophisticated, you could try something like taking everything into account, or on balance, or one I particularly like is in the final analysis.
In the final analysis. I like that one. It sounds very academic. It has some weight to it.
It does. It sets a tone of authority. It says, we've done the analysis, now here's the verdict. So that's step 1. The second part is the restated thesis.
Okay.
You must restate your position, but, and I really cannot stress this enough, you must never use the same words as your introduction.
Right, because that's the echo effect we talked about. We don't want to sound like a parrot just repeating itself.
Correct. This is a direct test of your paraphrasing ability. If your intro says, for example, working from home has increased significantly, your conclusion can't say the same thing.
So what would you say instead?
You'd say something like, the shift toward remote work represents a major transformation in contemporary employment patterns. It's the same idea, but with completely different vocabulary and structure.
Got it. So we've got the transition signal and the restated thesis. What's number 3?
Okay, this is probably the most difficult one to master, but it is the real difference between a Band 6 and a Band 7 or 8. It's synthesis, not just summary.
Okay, hold on there. That sounds a bit jargony. What's the real difference between a summary and a synthesis?
It's a great question. Think of it this way. A summary is basically a list. It says, in the essay, I discussed point A, and then I discussed point B. It's repetitive. It's boring. It doesn't show any thinking.
It's just reporting back on what you wrote.
Precisely. Synthesis, on the other hand, is showing how A and B connect to prove C. It's about demonstrating higher-level thinking. You're knitting the arguments together to form a new, stronger thread.
Can you give us a concrete example?
Of course. Let's say you're writing an essay about whether governments should invest more money in roads or in railways. A summary conclusion would be, in this essay, I looked at the benefits of roads and the benefits of rail. Both are important.
Okay, yeah. That's a bit dry and obvious.
Quite. A synthesis, however, would sound more like this. While the flexibility of roads is essential for local connectivity, the pressing environmental urgency and long-term economic efficiency of rail transport make it the superior strategic choice for future national investment.
Ah, I see. You're not just saying, I talked about both. You're weighing them against each other. You're saying, because of X and Y, Z is the clear winner.
You've hit the nail on the head. You are showing the examiner that you have processed the arguments and come to a reasoned judgment. That's what synthesis is.
And that must lead us to the final component, the force part.
The final thought. I like to call this the mic drop moment.
The mic drop. I love it. Like a rapper finishing an amazing set.
That's the vibe we want. It's where you leave the examiner with something to ponder. It could be a recommendation, it could be a prediction, or a call to action. But, and this is crucial, it must grow naturally from the discussion you've just had.
So I can't suddenly start talking about, I don't know, aliens invading if my essay was about public transport.
Please don't. That would be a new idea, which we'll get to. No, it needs to be relevant. So, for the transport essay, a good final thought might be, ultimately, the choices we make today regarding our infrastructure will shape the sustainability and livability of our cities for generations to come.
It looks forward. It adds resonance. It kind of raises the stakes.
It makes it feel important.
That is a fantastic framework. So, transition, restated thesis, synthesis, and final thought. But does this change depending on the question type? We get opinion essays, discussion essays, problem solution. Surely one size can't fit all.
You're absolutely right. One size does not fit all. You have to tailor the suit to fit the client, so to speak. Let's take opinion essays, the ones that ask, to what extent do you agree or disagree?
The big danger here is sitting on the fence, isn't it? Trying to be too nice and see both sides.
That is the ultimate score killer. A conclusion that says it is a complex issue with many pros and cons tells the examiner absolutely nothing about your opinion. You must be unambiguous.
You have to take a stand.
You have to plant your flag. So instead of saying, it depends, say something decisive like, therefore governments and educators would be wise to resist the pressure to commercialize education. It's firm. It's clear.
What about discussion essays, though? The ones where you have to discuss both views. Isn't that a bit contradictory to taking a strong stand?
Not necessarily. Here, you have to acknowledge the complexity. A good way to do this is to concede one point before asserting your main one. You can say, admittedly, the arguments for X have some merit. However, the case for Y is ultimately more compelling.
So you're showing you understand the other side, but you still made a judgment.
Exactly. For our rail versus roads essay, you might say, while we must continue to maintain our road networks, it is clear that rail should be the priority for future investment due to environmental concerns. It's a balanced assessment, not a wishy-washy one.
And for problem solution essays, what's the tone there?
The tone there should be hopeful and proactive. You want to acknowledge that the problem is real and serious, say an aging population, but you must affirm that the solutions you've proposed are viable.
So you end on a positive note.
A proactive one. A phrase I really love for this is, while the challenges are significant, they are far from insurmountable.
Far from insurmountable. That's a great phrase. It sounds optimistic, but also realistic. It's not saying, oh, this is easy. It's saying, we can do this.
Spot on. And finally, for advantages, disadvantages essays, it's simple. You need to weigh them. You have to explicitly state which side is heavier. On balance, the advantages of this trend appear to far outweigh the potential negative aspects.
So we have the strategy. We know how to adapt it. But strategies often fail when we fall into common traps. What are the big pitfalls, the don'ts, that students need to avoid?
Oh, there are a few classic don'ts that you need to avoid at all costs. The biggest one, the one that drives examiners absolutely crazy, is introducing new ideas.
Right. This is the one where in the last paragraph, you suddenly mention something you haven't talked about for the entire essay.
Yes. Imagine you're writing an essay about the effects of social media. You've written 2 brilliant paragraphs about mental health and communication. Then, in the conclusion, you suddenly write, additionally, video games are also very harmful to children.
Wait, what? Where did video games come from? We were talking about Instagram.
That's precisely the reaction the examiner has. It's confusing. It makes it look like you don't know how to structure an essay. The conclusion is for wrapping things up, not for opening a brand new can of worms.
Rule 1, no new worms. What else?
Being wishy-washy, I see this all the time. Using phrases like, it depends on the person, or everyone has their own opinion.
Examiners must hate that.
They despise it. They want to see your ability to evaluate arguments and form a position, not your ability to just shrug your shoulders. The prompt asked for your view, not a survey of what everyone else thinks.
And we've already mentioned the echo. That's just repeating the intro word for word. A definite don't.
A definite don't. Another one is informality. Avoid phrases like, in a nutshell.
In a nutshell. Yeah, save that for a chat in the pub.
Okay.
Not for a formal exam.
Exactly. It's a cliche and it's far too casual. And finally, simple one, length. A one-sentence conclusion is just pure laziness. It screams, I ran out of time and gave up. Aim for 3 to 5 sentences. Give it some substance.
Okay, so that covers the basics and the intermediate stuff pretty thoroughly. But we promised a deep dive. I want to talk about the high-level strategies, the things for people who are aiming for a band 8 or a band 9. What are these advanced techniques? How do we add that extra sparkle?
Now we're getting into the artistry of writing. This is the fun stuff. One of my absolute favorite techniques is what I call the full circle conclusion.
Ooh, full circle. That sounds elegant. How does that work?
It creates a beautiful narrative loop. What you do is you reference an image, an anecdote, or a concept from your hook, from your very first sentence in your conclusion. It ties the whole piece together in a really satisfying way.
Can you give me an example? I'm trying to visualize how that would play out.
Sure. Let's say your introduction starts with a vivid image of a traditional family dinner table to illustrate the concept of family values disappearing in the modern world. You paint that picture in the intro.
Okay, I can see that.
Then, in your conclusion, after summarizing your points about technology and work-life balance, you could end with something like, quote, "Perhaps it is time for us to learn to clear our busy schedules as readily as we clear our plates, making room once again for that timeless and vital scene of a family gathered together around the table."
Wow. That actually gives me chills a little bit. It feels so complete. It's like the end of a novel, not just an essay.
It is. It shows the examiner that you are in total control of the essay's structure, from the very first word to the very last. You remembered where you started, and you brought the reader back home.
That's a brilliant technique. What's another one?
The concession assertion pattern. This is where you use a structure like, admittedly, X is certainly true. Nevertheless, Y remains the more important consideration.
Why is that better than just saying why is important? What does the admittedly part do?
It shows incredible sophistication. It proves that you understand the opposing viewpoint, you've considered it fairly, but you've ultimately rejected it based on the evidence. It demonstrates genuine critical thinking.
So it's like saying, I hear you, I understand your point, but here's why you're wrong.
Which is a much more powerful and convincing argument than just ignoring the other side completely. It makes you sound very reasonable and measured.
I like that.
Okay,
what else is in the advanced toolkit?
A third technique is the future-oriented close. This is especially good for topics about technology or the environment. You look ahead, you broaden the scope. Something like, the policy choices we make today regarding artificial intelligence will inevitably shape the future relationship between humans and machines for the next century.
It raises the stakes. It tells the reader, hey, this isn't just an academic exercise, this matters.
It makes it feel urgent and important. And one last one, the qualified recommendation. Avoid absolute statements. Don't say, this policy will solve the problem of obesity. That's naive. No single thing solves a complex problem 100%.
So you add nuance.
You add nuance. You say, sugar taxes are likely to be most effective when accompanied by comprehensive public health education campaigns. It shows you understand that the world isn't black and white, and examiners love a student who can see the gray areas.
Nuance is definitely key for those high bands.
Yeah.
Okay, let's pivot. We spent a lot of time on task 2, which is totally appropriate because it's worth more marks, but we can't ignore task 1 academic.
The graphs, the charts, the diagrams.
Yes. Does the same conclusion logic apply here? Can I use my fancy in the final analysis for a bar chart?
Absolutely not. And this is a major, major point of confusion for so many students. In task 1, we do not write a conclusion. We write an overview.
An overview. Is that just a fancy word for the same thing, or is it different?
No, the function is fundamentally different. A conclusion in task 2 is about your arguments, your opinions, synthesis. An overview in task 1 is purely descriptive. You are only describing the main patterns and trends you can see. You must not give opinions or reasons.
So if I see a graph where a company's sales went down sharply in 2020, I can't say sales went down because of the pandemic.
No. That is an opinion. It might be a factually correct opinion, but that reason is not in the graph. The graph just shows a line going down. You don't know why. You must only say sales experienced a sharp decline. If you start explaining why, you are failing task achievement.
Got it. Just the facts. Now, there's a big debate I've heard about where this overview should go.
There is. Some people put it at the end, like a conclusion, and you can do that, but I strongly, strongly recommend putting it immediately after the introduction.
Really? That feels a bit counterintuitive. Shouldn't the summary of everything come at the end?
There are two very important reasons. First, the practical strategic reason. It ensures you don't run out of time and forget to write it. If you miss the overview, if you write a brilliant detailed description, but you forget that main summary paragraph, your score for task achievement is capped.
Capped at what?
Usually at a band 5 for that criteria. It doesn't matter how good the rest of it is.
Whoa. So if I write a perfect description, but I run out of time and forget the overview, I've basically tanked my score.
Yes. It's a fatal error. So do it first. Write your introduction, then write your overview. Get it out of the way. The second reason is it gives the examiner the big picture immediately. It sets the context for all the detailed paragraphs that are about to flow.
So they know what to look for in the details.
It helps them understand the data before they get bogged down in all the specific numbers.
That's a fantastic tip. So intro, then overview, then the body paragraphs with the details. What actually goes into the overview itself?
You're looking for 2 to 4 of the most significant main trends. But here is the crucial rule. No specific numbers.
No numbers. In a task, that's all about numbers. That sounds very strange.
In the overview, yes, save the data, the 50%, the 3 million tons for your body paragraphs. The overview should use big picture language. Words like overall, generally, was dominated by, steadily declined.
So you're zooming out.
You are zooming out. If you start putting specific numbers in your overview, you're not writing an overview anymore. You're writing a detail paragraph. You zoomed in too close, too soon.
That is a very clear distinction. Let's run through how this applies to the different chart types, because a map is obviously very different from a line graph. What about a line graph?
For a line graph, you're looking for the overall movement over time. Did things generally go up, down, or fluctuate, for example? Overall, it is clear that the number of tourists increased in all 4 countries, with the figure for Japan rising the most dramatically. No numbers, just the main direction and the most notable feature.
Okay. What about a pie chart?
With pie charts, you're looking for the biggest and the smallest slices, or if there are 2 charts, you're looking for the most drastic changes in proportions. For instance, overall food spending dropped by half over the period, while housing consistently remained the largest category of expenditure.
So again, no percentages, just a general description like dropped by half.
Exactly. What about process diagrams? Those ones like how concrete is made or the life cycle of a frog?
Yeah, those could be tricky.
For those, you want to comment on the overall nature of the process. How many stages are there? Is it linear or cyclical? Where does it start and end? A good overview would be, overall, the diagram illustrates a complex linear process consisting of 8 distinct stages, which begins with the harvesting of raw materials and culminates in the final packaging of the product.
And finally, maps.
Maps nearly always show a place before and after some development, so your overview should focus on the main transformation. Overall, the town underwent a significant transformation, with the most notable change being the replacement of extensive farmland with new residential and commercial developments. You sum up the big change.
Are there any advanced techniques for the overview?
Yeah.
For those people really striving for perfection?
Yes, a couple. One I really like is the exception highlight. This is where you state the general trend and then point out the one thing that didn't follow it. For example, while visitor numbers declined in all European destinations, the figure for sub-Saharan Africa, in contrast, saw a marked increase.
I like that. It's like saying, everyone did this except for that one guy. It shows really sharp observation skills.
It does. It shows you've really analyzed the data. Another one is the dual focus overview. This is where you mention both the trend over time and the comparison between the different groups in one sentence. For example, while all countries saw an increase in exports over the decade, Germany consistently outperformed all other nations, maintaining its position as the dominant exporter throughout the period.
So you're covering both axes of the graph in one go. That's very efficient.
It's very dense and very impressive.
Smart. Okay, let's switch gears one last time to our general training candidates. They don't have to deal with graphs and charts. They write letters. Task 1, general training. Do they need a conclusion?
They need a closing paragraph. It's not a conclusion in the academic sense, and it's definitely not an overview. It's all about wrapping up the correspondence in a socially appropriate way.
So what's the goal of this closing paragraph?
Really, it's twofold. To summarize your main request or point and to indicate the next step, you need to tell the recipient what you want them to do now or what you plan to do next. You can't just end the story abruptly.
And I'm guessing the biggest landmine here is tone.
It is the tone trap. You absolutely have to match your closing to the relationship you have with the person you're writing to. If you get the tone wrong, you lose marks for tone and register, which is a key part of the GT scoring.
Okay, let's break down the 3 levels of formality. First up, formal. This is for someone you don't know, a manager, a landlord, a serious business situation.
Right. For your closing sentence, you would say something polite and a bit distant, like, I look forward to hearing from you at your earliest convenience. And the sign-off here is tricky. If you don't know the person's name, if you started your letter with Dear Sir or Madam, you must end with yours faithfully.
Faithfully. Okay, and what if you do know their name, like Dear Mr. Smith?
Then it must be yours sincerely. A helpful little trick to remember this, sincerely and Smith both start with S.
Oh, that's good. Sincerely Smith. And faithfully for a faceless person.
That's a great way to think of it. If they are faceless, sir, madam, you are faithful. If they have a name, Smith, you are sincere.
That is a genuinely useful memory aid. Okay, what about semi-formal? A colleague you know a bit, or a neighbor.
Here you can soften it. A good closing sentence is, I hope to hear from you soon. And you'd sign off with kind regards or best regards. It's the perfect middle ground. Not too stiff, not too sloppy.
And finally, informal, writing to a friend.
Now you can relax, can't wait to catch up, or write back soon. And you can sign off with best wishes, cheers, or if it's a really close friend, you can even use love.
So what are the common mistakes people make with this?
The biggest one is mixing the tones. You do not sign off a formal letter of complaint to your boss with cheers.
No, that would probably not go down well.
And you don't sign off a letter to your best friend inviting them to your birthday party with yours faithfully. That's just cold and weird.
It sounds like a robot wrote it. Dear Mom, yours faithfully. She'd think you'd been kidnapped or something.
Without a doubt. The other big mistake is the abrupt stop. This is where you finish telling your story and then just sign your name. You need that polite closing sentence to buffer the end. I hope you can make it to the party. Then sign off.
It's like saying goodbye on the phone. You don't just hang up.
You don't just hang up. You say, okay, talk to you later, bye. It's the same principle.
This has been incredibly thorough. But knowledge is one thing, and application under pressure is a completely different beast. We need to talk about exam day strategy. The clock is ticking. The pressure is on. How do we actually do this when the heat is on?
Time management is everything. It's non-negotiable. For task 2, which is 40 minutes, you must allocate the final 5 minutes specifically for the conclusion. You have to be disciplined about this.
What do you mean? Like set an alarm?
Mentally, yes. If you are halfway through writing a body paragraph and you look up and see you only have 6 minutes left, you must stop.
Really? Stop mid-body paragraph. Just leave the argument hanging.
Yes. Finish the sentence you're on and immediately start writing your conclusion. I guarantee you an essay with 2 strong body paragraphs and a strong conclusion will score higher than an essay with 3 body paragraphs and no conclusion. The structural completeness is essential.
That's a bold strategy, but it makes a lot of sense. It's like triage. You have to save the patient, which is the overall essay structure.
That's a perfect analogy.
But what if disaster strikes? You have 60 seconds left, your brain just freezes, you're staring at the paper in a panic.
Then you deploy the emergency conclusion template. I tell all my students to memorize the simple structure. In conclusion, restate your main position in 1 sentence. Summarize your 1 or 2 key points in 1 sentence. Add 1 final thought or prediction.
It's a fill-in-the-blanks conclusion.
It's a fill-in-the-blanks conclusion. Look, it's not going to win a Pulitzer Prize. It won't be elegant. But it will save your score from tanking due to an incomplete essay. It satisfies the basic criteria. It stops the bleeding.
Is there a way to make the writing process easier so we're not in that emergency situation in the first place?
Yes. Plan ahead. This is the real secret. When you are doing your initial 5-minute planning phase, before you write a single word of the essay itself, you should draft a quick idea for your conclusion.
So you know where you're driving the car before you even start the engine.
Precisely. You can just scribble a note. Concul benefits, drawbacks, future Hesperital sustainable tech. If you know the destination, the drive is so much easier and more direct.
And does that help while you're writing the main body?
It's a huge help. While you're writing your body paragraphs, you can use what I call the what-if check. Ask yourself, what does this paragraph I'm writing now mean for my conclusion? It keeps you focused. It stops you from wandering off topic and writing something that makes the conclusion impossible to write later.
That is great advice. It keeps that logical thread running through the whole piece.
It does. It ensures that when you arrive at the end, you're not surprised by what you've written. You're just executing the final part of your plan.
We have covered a massive amount of ground today. My brain is full, but in a really good way. Let's do a very quick recap for our listeners.
Sure, let's boil it all down. Number 1, for task 2, it's all about synthesis, not just summary. Paraphrase your thesis and always end with that mic drop moment.
Number 2, task 1, academic. It's an overview, not a conclusion. Describe the main trends, no specific numbers, and put it right after the introduction to be safe.
And number 3, task 1, general. It's a closing paragraph. Match the tone perfectly formal, semi-formal, or informal, or you'll lose marks.
And what's the one overarching theme, the secret weapon for all of this?
Paraphrasing. It's the secret weapon for the whole writing test, but especially in conclusions. If you can say the same thing in different sophisticated ways, you win. And please remember, practice makes permanent. Don't just listen to this and think that was interesting. Sit down, set a timer for 5 minutes, and just practice writing conclusions for old exam questions. Do 10 of them in a row.
A strong conclusion really is the difference between a good essay and a great one. It is the last thing the examiner reads, the flavor you leave in their mouth. Make sure it's sweet, not burnt.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Thank you so much for breaking all of this down for us. It has been a real eye-opener. I feel like I could walk into an exam hall right now and nail it.
My pleasure. Go get that band score.
And for you, listening right now, if you found this deep dive helpful, if you feel a little less panicked about that final paragraph, please like, share, and subscribe to this YouTube channel. It really helps us keep bringing you these deep dives.
Yes, please do. And good luck with your writing.
See you next time in the lab. Goodbye.